I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. According to Wikipedia, the USS Cyclops, or AC-4, was the second of 4 Proteus-class colliers built for the United States Navy several years before World War I. Named after the Cyclops, a race of giants from Greek mythology, she was the second U.S. naval vessel to bear the name. The loss of the ship and 306 crew and passengers without a trace, sometime after the 4th of March 1918, remains the single largest loss of life in the history of the U.S. Navy, not directly involving combat. As the loss occurred during World War I, she was thought to have been captured or sunk by a German raider or submarine, because she was carrying 10,800 long tons of manganese ore, used to produce munitions, but German authorities at the time and subsequently denied any knowledge of the vessel. The Naval History and Heritage Command has stated that she, quote, probably sank in an unexpected storm, end quote, but the cause of the ship's loss is not known. Cyclops was launched on the 7th of May 1910 by William Cramp and Sons of Philadelphia and placed in service on the 7th of November 1910. Operating with the Naval Auxiliary Service Atlantic Fleet, she voyaged in the Baltic from May to July 1911 to supply 2nd Division ships. Returning to Norfolk, Virginia, she operated on the East Coast from Newport, Rhode Island to the Caribbean, servicing the fleet. During the United States occupation of Veracruz in Mexico in 1914 and 1915, she culled ships on patrol there and received the thanks of the U.S. State Department for cooperation in evacuating refugees. With American entry into World War I, Cyclops was commissioned on the 1st of May 1917. She joined a convoy for Saint-Nazaire, France, in June 1917, returning to the U.S. in July. Except for a voyage to Halifax, Nova Scotia, she served along the East Coast until the 9th of January 1918, when she was assigned to the Naval Oversea Transportation Service. She then sailed to Brazilian waters to fuel British ships in the South Atlantic, receiving the thanks of U.S. State Department and Commander-in-Chief, Pacific. The ship put to sea from Rio de Janeiro on the 16th of February 1918 and entered Salvador on the 20th of February. 2 days later, she departed for Baltimore, Maryland, with no stops scheduled, carrying the manganese ore. The ship was thought to be overloaded when she left Brazil, as her maximum capacity was 8,000 long tons. Before leaving port, Commander Worley had submitted a report that the starboard engine had a cracked cylinder and was not operative. This report was confirmed by a survey board, which recommended, however, that the ship be returned to the United States. She made an unscheduled stop in Barbados because the water level was over the Plimsoll line, indicating that it was overloaded, but investigations in Rio proved the ship had been loaded and secured properly. Cyclops then set out for Baltimore on the 4th of March and was rumored to have been sighted on the 9th of March by the molasses tanker Amolco near Virginia, but this was denied by Amolco's captain. Additionally, because Cyclops was not due in Baltimore until the 13th of March, the ship was highly unlikely to have been near Virginia on the 9th of March, as that location would have placed her only about a day from Baltimore. In any event, Cyclops never arrived in Baltimore, and no wreckage of the ship has ever been found. Reports indicate that on the 10th of March, the day after Cyclops was rumored to have been sighted by Amalco, a violent storm swept through the Virginia Capes area. While some suggest that the combination of the overloaded condition, engine trouble, and bad weather may have conspired to sink Cyclops. An extensive naval investigation concluded, quote, "Many theories have been advanced, but none that satisfactorily accounts for her disappearance." End quote. This summation was written, however, before two of Cyclops' sister ships, Proteus and Nereus, vanished at sea during World War II, less than a year after their sale to civilian operators. Both ships were transporting heavy loads of metallic ore similar to that which was loaded on the Cyclops during her fatal voyage. In both cases, their loss was theorized to have been the result of catastrophic structural failure, but a more outlandish theory attributes all three vessels' disappearances to the Bermuda Triangle. Rear Admiral George Van Doors suggests that the loss of the Cyclops could be owing to structural failure, as her sister ships suffered from issues where the I-beams that ran the length of the ship had eroded due to the corrosive nature of some of the cargo carried. This was observed definitively on the USS Jason and is believed to have contributed to the sinking of another similar freighter, Chukey, which snapped in two in calm seas. Moreover, Cyclops may have hit a storm with 30 to 40 knot winds. These would have resulted in waves just far enough apart to leave the bow and stern supported on the peaks of successive waves, but with the middle unsupported, resulting in extra strain on the already weakened central area. On the 1st of June 1918, Assistant Secretary of the Navy Franklin D. Roosevelt declared Cyclops to be officially lost and all hands deceased. One of the seamen lost aboard Cyclops was African-American mess attendant Lewis H. Hardwick, the father of Herbert Lewis Hardwick, quote, "the Cocoa Kid," an Afro-Puerto Rican welterweight boxer who was a top contender in the 1930s and 1940s, who won the world-colored welterweight and world-colored middleweight championships. In 1918, a short summary of the loss of Cyclops was listed in the U.S. Navy Annual Report. For a BBC Radio 4 documentary, Tom Mangold had an expert from Lloyd's investigate the loss of Cyclops. The expert noted that the manganese ore, being much denser than coal, had room to move within the folds, even when fully laden. The hatch covers were canvas, and that when wet, the ore can become a slurry. As such, the load could shift and cause the ship to list. Combined with a possible loss of power from its one engine, it could founder in bad weather. Investigations by the Office of Naval Intelligence revealed that Captain Worley was born Johann Friedrich Wickmann in Sandstedt, Hanover, Germany in 1862. The official Navy Register lists his date of birth as the 11th of December, 1865, and that he had entered America by jumping ship in San Francisco in 1878. By 1898, he had changed his name to Worley after a seaman friend, and owned and operated a saloon in San Francisco's Barbary Coast. He also got help from brothers whom he had convinced to emigrate. During this time he had qualified for the position of ship's master and had commanded several civilian merchant ships, picking up and delivering cargo, both legal and illegal, some accounts say opium, from Far East to San Francisco. Unfortunately, the crews of these ships reported that Worley suffered from a personality allegedly akin to that sometimes ascribed to HMS Pandora's captain Edward Edwards, with the crew often being brutalized by Worley for trivial things. Worley was commissioned as a lieutenant commander in the Naval Auxiliary Reserve on the 21st of February, 1917. Naval investigators discovered information from former crew members about Worley's habits. He would berate and curse officers and men for minor offenses, sometimes getting violent. At one point, he allegedly chased an ensign about the ship with a pistol. Saner Times found him making his rounds about the ship dressed in long underwear and a derby hat. Worley would sometimes have an inexperienced officer in charge of loading cargo on the ship, while more experienced man was confined to the quarters. In Rio de Janeiro, one such man was assigned to oversee the loading of the manganese ore, something a collier was not used to carrying, and in this instance, the ship may have been overloaded, which may have contributed to her sinking. The most serious accusations against Worley was that he was pro-German in wartime and may have colluded with the enemy. Indeed, his closest friends and associates were either German or Americans of German descent. Quote, "Many Germanic names appear," end quote, Livingston stated, speculating that the ship had many German sympathizers on board. One of the passengers on the final voyage was Alfred Louis Moreau Gottschalk, the consul general in Rio de Janeiro, who was as roundly hated for his pro-German sympathies as was Worley. Livingston stated he believed Gottschalk may have been directly involved in collaborating with Worley on handing the ship over to the Germans. After World War I, German records were checked to ascertain the fate of Cyclops, whether by Worley's hand or by submarine attack. Nothing was found. Near the time the search for Cyclops was called off, a telegram was received by the State Department from Charles Ludlow Livingston, the U.S. consul on Barbados. Department's 15th. Confidential. Masters. Cyclops stated that required 600 tons coal, having sufficient on board to reach Bermuda. Engines very poor condition. Not sufficient funds and therefore requested payment by me. Unusually reticent. I have ascertained he took here ton fresh meat, ton flour, 1,000 pounds vegetables, paying therefore $775. From different sources gather the following. He had plenty of coal, alleged inferior, took coal to mix, probably had more than 1,500 tons. Master alluded to by others as damned Dutchman, apparently disliked by other officers. Rumored disturbances en route hither, men confined and one executed. Also had some prisoners from the fleet in Brazilian waters, one life sentence. United States Consul General Gottschalk passenger, 231 crew exclusive of officers and passengers. Have names of crew, but not of all the officers and passengers. Many Germanic names appear. Number telegraphic or wireless messages addressed to master are in care of ship where delivered at this port. All telegrams for Barbados on file, head office, St. Thomas. I have to suggest scrutiny there. While not having any definite grounds, I fear fate worse than sinking, though possibly based on instinctive dislike felt towards master. So what do you think happened to the USS Cyclops?
Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. Sick of dealing with the old plan. They know that we're calling it wrong. You got me like, oh yeah. I think that we've all had enough. Sick of dealing with the old plan. They know that we're calling it wrong. Hey, it's too late to try to go contain it. A generation fueled by creation. We live lives on a small screen nation. We control the airwaves, no negotiation. I refuse to think we need saving. Something good will come from creation. And when we think that the world is too anxious, we'll adapt, evolve, survive, and save it. What keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah.